Hi, everybody. My name is Rae Deveney, and I'd like to say thank you to Don Turkla and Diana Capone, and as well as my advisor, Dr. David Proctor of the History Department. So my research is titled Church and State in Byzantium, and I will get into it. So first of all, what was Byzantium and who were the Byzantines? So Byzantium was an empire based in the Mediterranean around the city called Constantinople, which is now often officially called Istanbul. So it was an empire kind of built on the vestiges of the old Roman Empire. And depending on who you ask, it began in 313, but officially ended with the fall of Constantinople in 1453. And Byzantium was made up of Greeks as we think of them today, but also Latins, Macedonians, Armenians, Syrians, people from all over, and had an incredibly rich diversity and was a complete multicultural empire that was really united as the years went on under Eastern or Orthodox Christianity. And so as the empire grew, with it grew the church in Constantinople, which was the head of the Eastern Orthodox religion. And it was also headed by the patriarch, who was essentially what you can think of as the Pope of Eastern Rite Christianity. And he becomes very problematic as the years go on for many emperors. And for the purpose of this research, you can think of, and I thought of the state as the emperor and each individual emperor's own political goals and aspirations. So my question was, how did the emperor and the church interact? And so since this empire was over 1,000 years old, this is a very kind of difficult question to ask. But through my research, I kind of centralized on land ownership and the problem that brought between the church and the state in this empire. So a couple important things to remember is that all power was centralized in Constantinople. This was where the see of the patriarch was, and this is also where the emperor and his imperial government and army were centered. So there was a lot of personality conflict going on within the city itself. And so who really held the upper hand was Byzantium theocracy, as Western people sometimes think, and is often seen in Western sources, or was it a true autocracy and empire? And so if it was a true autocracy, how did the emperor control the church? And how was he able to do this without overstepping and controlling the church through religious beliefs? And so the way that I've found that the emperor was able to control the church was through land policy. So a couple important key terms that came up again and again in my research was, the first one was pronia, which was an imperial land donation used by the emperor to kind of fortify the empire's land and to gain political favor. So it was originally non-hereditary grant of land that did give tax exemption and was a way for the emperor to gain favor and to keep land, especially in Anatolia, under the imperial government. And so charistikeion is a very interesting term that came in the later part of the Byzantine Empire. So it was an imperial land grant of church land given to an individual so that the land could be taxed and could be made use of by the emperor. And so that way, the growth of church land holdings could be tempered, at least for a short period. And then alilenion, which is a shared responsibility of tax payment. So originally peasants had the responsibility of paying taxes, but this, under Basil II, predominantly shifted that focus onto the dynatoi, which was the aristocracy, which also included powerful bishops and monasteries, and made it so that those in power had to pay the taxes and were more liable to the government. And so why is this important? So land grants really were a way to tie the owners to the emperor and to the imperial government. But of course, as happens with powerful aristocracy, over time they became almost like small principalities, and huge landowners, including monasteries and bishops, became powerful enough that they kind of could subvert the emperor's power if he did not specifically curtail them. So how did they interact specifically over this? I looked at a period between 920 and 1118, which was a heightened time of political discord and land instability in the empire. So the first edict under Romanus Lecapenus in 922 was the first time that an emperor really was on the side of the peasantry against the Dietoi and the church. And this was followed by the Emperor Nicephorus II Phocas, who was a very devout Christian, but who could not tempt and take away the patriarch's religious moral authority. So he did this via land. And so first he tried to stop the increase of church land holdings, which was seen as a huge problem. But since he was so devout and such a Christian figure, he wore like a hair shirt to sleep to show like his morality, that he could not be argued against with this. And this was really a way to take down individual powerful bishops who were just gaining so much land. And then the Edict of 996, which came under the reign of Basil II, shows the highest point of contention between the church and the emperor, as this really took away power from monastic landholders and really showed a split between the church and the emperor. So my conclusions, without going into the individual specifics of about 10 different emperors, is that during this specific time period, land was becoming so important in the empire that previous usages of land, like through Pronia, could not be used anymore, because you have now Turk and Muslim forces coming in and trying to get land in Anatolia, which was so important. And while these landowners were building up so much power, they were also becoming more and more separated. And this included churches and monasteries. And if the church had enough money and enough power and wasn't paying taxes to the emperor, who exactly was in charge? And was the church taking away power from the emperor? And could he disrupt the axis of power? And so the land edicts shown in this time period really show a way that emperors were able to stop the church in a way from building up too much power. But it also shows an extreme codependency, because even though the emperor was taking away power from the church, he could never go after, really, without the people rising against him, the religious aspects of the church. And the church still needed the emperor for fortification against foreign invaders. And it really does show a different light to how conceptions of Byzantium are often seen. Many people confuse it with feudal Western Europe, which it really isn't, because in that there are just so many differences, especially in how land was controlled. And so I'm just hoping that my research showed a bit the kind of intricacies of Byzantium and its land policies, and that it really isn't the same as feudal Western Europe. So yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Any questions?
Okay.
I do have one. Why the hair shirt recognized as being devout?
Like he wouldn't sleep like on a bed. Sorry, he wouldn't like sleep on a bed, and he wanted to suffer to show his like Christian morality. And he was an emperor that was so against the Dietoi in the church that they couldn't really say that he was taking away religious power by interfering with religion or trying to disrupt religious power. He was really just taking away the excesses of these bishops who were living like kings themselves. Yeah.
Okay. And also one other follow-up. Do you think that the conflict between the church and state during this period either strengthened the empire overall, or weakened it and led to its collapse quicker due to the outside pressure of the?
That's a very loaded question. The empire really did dissolve only a few hundred years after this, but I think it does show more so kind of the extent that an empire could become. It was so huge, and that it really couldn't protect itself against other empires that were becoming just as powerful, especially in the East. So I really don't have an answer for that, but I think it could definitely become a huge contributor, that the emperors were really unfavorable towards the church, and that kind of created a seed of discontent discontent within the people, and the people were becoming more and more orthodox. So to see that their emperor was going against the church could have been an issue.
Awesome. Thank you very much.